What's up? What's up? What's up? What's up? What's up, guys? So starting off a little bit earlier, so I can share, share, and you can share as well. Let's see what we got going on here. Hope everybody's doing all right tonight, cause Oz is, yes, I is. All right. Let's see what we got going on here. Got that right there. That right there, right there. That person right there. I'm missing somebody. Send separately. Copy link. All right. Go down here and then go up and now. Yes, sir. Oh no, I don't even want to share that like that. Let me go back. Let me go back. Let me go back. Let me go back. But it's been a while. So again, I totally appreciate you guys um tuning in tonight. It's been a while since I've done this. Actually, me talking. I know the last time I did it, I just played a video and let you guys partake into the lovely. Um, Dang, what was her name? Ooh, I don't forgot her name. But she was basically talking about postpartum um, what slave syndrome, something like that. I don't forgot already. Gee willikers. Great video. You need to go back and listen to that. But let's see. The uncanny. I haven't looked this up yet. The uncanny. Can you take over? Can you find myself? All right, there we go. I want to live. Turn the volume down. Share. Copy link. Why didn't share like this first? So you guys gonna come on in here. Go on, come on in here. I think I want to do it that way. Might be better. Let's see. Mail room. Okay. All right. Got my little shares out. Let's see. All right. So did all my little sharing. And again, I know it's like a touchy situation with a lot of people. A lot of people really don't want to hear stuff like this. And I get it, but then I don't. Due to this has a lot of history in it. And what I mean about it has a lot of history in it, referring to a lot of history that needs to be seen and actually rewritten because when it was written, it was a whole bunch of lies, a whole bunch of crap. So we're going to go ahead and get this intro out the way so we can get this party started. So, welcome to the Uncanny Takeover podcast. And this is probably going, but I say this is my first initial episode with my rebranding and whatnot. What's up, Tishawn? How are you? Again, like I say, stuff like this, I know it kind of puts people on the edge of their chairs. Sometimes they don't want to hear stuff like this. They would just rather go and live life without understanding one of the reasons why this country is the way it is, right? So I'm actually doing a multi-part audio on our podcast channel. And if you're not following us on any platform that you listen to your podcast, it's going to be the Uncanny Takeover. And you'll find it. And the beginning of the month, I should be putting out the first episode. But it's a multi-part episode, and it's basically talking about how we're being faded out. We've been faded out from the very beginning. It's been an ongoing narrative, and I guess we just won't go away. And I think that's what makes it kind of hard. But tonight we're going to talk about the human zoo. I came across this on YouTube, which is going to be a part. Some of the clips are going to be going into depth with what I'm talking about on the podcast, but I just wanted to share this, and I'm going to be watching it with you guys and pausing it. So it's going to be kind of like a two-part type thing, because I'm going to be watching this at the bottom of the screen with you guys, because I think stuff like this is being missed and not being played, especially in our community, because this is not something that we're interested in. We look past this when it's gems that are sitting in these documentaries and videos and information about how we were done back in the days. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and get this started. This is crazy. I'm shed a tear a little bit. I haven't watched all of it. I just watched it when I said I got to share this, and I have to.
The placing of the boy in the cage with a monkey is an outrage. The Negro race in America has a hard enough time as it is in getting away from the prejudice that is closely related to the monkey without having a member of the race placed on exhibition.
Leading men of science from Harvard and Princeton and Columbia University were saying that Africans were midway between an orangutan and a human being. So 100 years later, it should not come as much of a surprise that many people still cling to these notions of European superiority, African inferiority.
Again, guys, I'm going to be stopping this in certain spots, and we're going to have a discussion on some of the stuff that we just listened to. So if you're watching this or rewatching this, you know.
The year was 1859. 3 months after Charles Darwin published his book On the Origin of Species, American promoter P.T. Barnum unveiled a new attraction at his popular museum in New York City. It featured what was described as the "What is it?" or man monkey. Visitors were told that the creature had been captured by hunters in Africa, who discovered a race of beings roving among the trees and branches like apes and monkeys. Museum staff declared that the creature had been pronounced by scientists as a connecting link between African blacks and lower animals. In reality, Barnum's so-called man monkey was an African-American man named William Henry Johnson. Thanks to Barnum, Johnson spent much of his life on public display as an evolutionary missing link, sometimes in a cage. Many reporters at the time were happy to promote the deception. The New York Tribune declared that Barnum's performer seemed to be a cross between an ape species and a Negro, while another paper declared
The head is shaped like that of a monkey, but the face is more like that of an African Negro of the lower order. It has been pronounced by naturalists as a specimen of the connecting link between man and monkey.
Many more supposed missing links were marketed to the public at freak shows throughout.
If my thing was, I've heard how back in the days we were called monkeys. And again, I'm 43. So I'm just now seriously getting into history. I never liked it history. I couldn't stand history because for me, history in school was a bunch of bull crap. I smelt the BS and I just I couldn't listen to it. I couldn't believe it. I just didn't think that what I was forced to read was true because it didn't make sense to me. Something in me told me that it's not true. And so now, as I get older and I'm starting to see this stuff and I'm starting to see how life was before we even the forefathers made it to this country and whatnot, and stuff that has happened in Egypt and Africa, how they just separated Egypt from Africa and whatnot. It's starting to make sense. It's starting to make sense how the narrative was created, and that, to be honest, we talk about facts, we talk about truth, we talk about evidence, we talk about receipts. But can we say that all of those things that I just named are true 100%? All of those things are kind of like you taking a paternity test and you find out that you're 99.99999 the father. That's what those are. It's a bit percentage of that just may not be true or may have been stretched because it's coming from out of someone else's mouth. 9 times out of 10, a lot of the stuff that's factual in books are not coming directly from that person. And I'm not saying that it isn't, but majority of it is. And so I see something like this, that we are the missing link between the monkey and humans and the evolution and stuff. It just blew my mind.
America. In the 1880s, there was Crow, promoted as living proof of Darwin's theory of the descent of man. She was described as a perfect specimen of the step between man and monkey.
Bruh.
Actually, Crow was a young woman from Southeast Asia who suffered from hypertrichosis, a rare genetic condition that produces excessive hair. In the early 1900s, there was Congo, the ape man.
Bruh, do you know how many? I went to basic training in the Navy, and for my first time ever, 19 years old, in the room with 70-something men. I mean, and we're having a shower with 70-something men because we're going into the Navy, right? I've never in my life seen so many hairy men, and majority of them was white. And so for that species to sit and say that black people remind them of monkeys, I sometimes be feeling as though back in the days when they were speaking this form of language towards us, to the black community, they were really talking about themselves, hypothetically. You know, I don't want nobody to shoot the messenger, but you know what I'm saying? But that's wrong, just because she had a lot of hair on her.
Usually exhibited in a cage next to a chimpanzee. Most of these early presentations of missing links were crude hoaxes put forward by hucksters, not scientists. But the quest to dramatize the lower stages of human evolution eventually reached far beyond freak shows. It ultimately involved the most elite members of the scientific community, and it was given a platform at one of the most celebrated events in early 20th century America. Today, Forest Park in St. Louis is a place for walking, or riding a bicycle, or spending a quiet Sunday afternoon. But more than a century ago, it was one of the most visited locations in the entire United States, the site of the 1904 St. Louis World's Fair. Attracting more than 19 million visitors, the World's Fair was known for its lavish neoclassical buildings, its 22-story high Ferris wheel, and the public debut of innovations such as the X-ray machine and the ice cream cone. But the fair had a darker side.
Oh. Yeah. Keep moving.
Organizers imported thousands of indigenous peoples from around the world to be put on public display in what was essentially a giant human zoo. Unlike freak shows, the human zoo in St. Louis was created with the cooperation of America's scientific establishment. The man behind the human zoo was anthropologist William McGee.
All right. Here's something else again. An anthropologist, a scientist, all these big titles. We didn't create those. We didn't know anything about those. Archaeologists, or however you pronounce that, the people that go find the bones and whatnot. We didn't create those. White people back then just decided that, hey, this is what I am and this is what I do. Let me put a name of what I do so I can have this title, so I can sound and look superior and whatnot. And it's basically been solidified, been made concrete in our studies. And so this is something that we have to believe now, that we have to get degrees for this stuff, because it was too many people starting. Let me take that back. It was too many other colored people realizing that, hey, I'm smarter than them. I can do the same thing. I can dig for bones. Heck, I can operate as well. I know math. I know whatever this science thing is. Actually, I know a little bit better than you. So I'm going to call myself a doctor. We can't do that. So now, hence the universities, the degrees that you have to establish. Granted, I'm not saying I don't just want any and everybody operating on me. And I know you need to have practice. I know you need to have a school. I know somebody needs to train you. But how university is set up, it's not set up for to really, I ain't gonna say it's not setting up someone to do the job that they're going to school for, but it is so much debt into it. Because there are so many classes. My wife is going out for nurse practitioner, and she's taking classes like music. Like, are you gonna be going in the room and singing to the patients? Which some of them probably do. I know some doctors that treat kids, they go in and that's how they distract the kids and stuff. But I'm just saying, man.
One of the nation's leading scientists, McGee had already served as acting president of the American Association for the Advancement of Science. In 1903, he was asked to head the anthropology department for the World's Fair. McGee had grand plans of presenting the story of human evolution by displaying representatives of what he considered lower stages of the human race. McGee's plans reflected the ideas of mainstream anthropology of the time.
Anthropology was kind of founded on this idea of mapping civilization from the highest to the lowest, right? With the lowest at that time said to be Africans, and then you sort of move up. Leading men of science from Harvard and Princeton and Columbia University were saying that Africans were midway between an orangutan and a human being.
Like many scientists of his day, McGee drew inspiration for his ideas on human development from Darwin's theory that humans had evolved from ape-like ancestors.
Darwin's theory provided a template
So they really don't
for
know.
categorizing Africans as biological inferiors. His impact created a bandwagon effect on many scholars on both sides of the Atlantic. Africans were demeaned with terms like savages
Look,
and compared to animals.
like folks are savages.
Admittedly,
Come on.
some of these comparisons were used
They
before
hunting.
Darwin, but after Darwin, the increase.
Like, seriously, man, they white people back then made Africans seem as though they were just so savage. But who had the guns? Who was going around and pillaging every country, city, stealing, taking, claiming? But we savages? Get the fuck out of here, bro.
Took on the authority of science.
Darwin argued that the break in evolutionary history between apes and men came between Africans and Australian Aborigines and gorillas. In other words, he thought blacks were the closest humans to apes.
Thought. He didn't
German
know.
scientist Ernst Haeckel helped popularize the
Thought.
idea.
Ernst Haeckel was the leading German Darwinist in the late 19th and early 20th century. He corresponded extensively with Darwin, and Darwin recognized Haeckel's affinity with his own theory.
Ernst Haeckel also is known for his raving racism. And in fact, he had a graphic of the history of human evolution that in very pointed terms really embedded a racist view of human evolution. You had the Teutonic male on the top, the sort of the Germanic male, and then at the bottom you had some creatures that looked partly like apes, partly like Jews. He was also anti-Semitic. And in the middle, you have the transition from the ape-like creatures to the first human creatures. The ape-like creatures look pretty much like they're Africans. And the takeaway point that Ernst Haeckel had from this graph was that the difference between the highest human being and the lowest human being, the gap between the highest Teutonic male and the...
Oh, look at this fine specimen of a human. The only human out there that is not contaminated. Oh my God. Look at the curly hair. I'm pretty sure he has blue eyes too, right? The witchy looking nose. Such superior being he is. Like, and did you catch what they said about Jews? You need to see how symptomatic that was? But why ain't nobody, bro? Hey, it gets worse, bro. This is seriously crazy.
The first human being that was just one step above the apes was larger than the gap between the lowest human being and the highest ape.
At the St. Louis World Fair, William McGee expressed a similar view, arguing that scientists had now shown
the structure of the lowest humans more nearly resembles that of the highest ape-like animals than that of the highest humans.
Like other scientists of the era, McGee saw primitive non-white peoples as living evidence of man's evolutionary history.
The savage stands strikingly close to subhuman species in every aspect of mentality, as well as in bodily habits and bodily structure.
McGee was determined to use primitive peoples at the fair to dramatize for the public the different stages of human evolution, beginning with races he considered lowest on the evolutionary scale.
Dang.
McGee arranged for native peoples to be put on display in villages designed to recreate their native habitats. These villages were enclosed by fences, making them truly seem like human zoos. More than 4 million fairgoers reportedly visited these anthropological displays.
I'm assuming this is categorized as critical race theory because this shows how inhumane these people were. Now, this in itself is starting to show that, again, there's no such thing as racism. Literally, it wasn't until it was taught. So when people sit up here and say, oh, there's no such thing as race. Yeah, it was not a such thing as race. This was something that was being taught. A group of white men especially decided to say that, oh, there's a threat. I want to feel superior, but there's these other races that seems to be populating faster and more than we are. She just took some accountability and understood that something was wrong with y'all and that y'all need to go get some help, maybe some counseling, and maybe you could sit and talk to your wives and be a little bit more nicer. And maybe she would have gave it up for you and y'all could have had some more kids or whatnot. But again, y'all were too busy trying to rule and trick people like they specimens and you property and whatnot. I'm pretty sure you did your wife like that too. I don't want to have no stinking baby with you either. Ugh.
Eagerly staring at and poking at the indigenous peoples in their enclosures. Adding to the indignities, native peoples were pressured to participate in a series of athletic contests designed to show they were biologically inferior to whites. Those on display were
again contests. What are we doing now when we play basketball, football? They are putting us as their entertainment, and they wave dollar bills over our heads, and we think that money is a virtue, money is our worth. And it's not. Because when you hurt, your leg gone, your arm gone, what they do? They replace you with somebody else. Same thing they did to slaves. Bruh. Until we understand that we are still in slavery, just a new form, a new look. It is the same cereal with the new package on it.
Also subjected to experiments in a special laboratory set up by the fair's anthropology department. Directed by a psychology professor from Columbia University, the lab conducted tests to measure native people's intelligence and physical features, and even their threshold for pain. Some scientists came to the fair with more gruesome plans. Alish Hrdlichka was an anthropologist at the Smithsonian. He came to St. Louis hunting for dead bodies. Hrdlichka was obsessed with analyzing the brains of other races to gain insight into human evolution. He went on to assemble a collection of hundreds of embalmed human brains, many of them still stored by the Smithsonian. Hrdlichka extracted a promise from doctors in St. Louis to hand over the brains of any of the natives who might die while on display at the fair. Native peoples were brought to the St. Louis Exposition from the far corners of...
Notice now, they didn't never say that any poor white people were set up at this fair. It was just all Indians and Africans, indigenous type people, Asians too. There might have been some Jews there, but not Caucasian white people, European type people. So how are you experimenting on all of those type people, those different races? So we have to call them races because there's a such thing now, races. So let's sit up and say all those communities, and I'm gonna just put it like that, those communities and whatnot, right? You're experimenting on these people and you're calling yourself trying to figure out who's less than human, who's I'm assuming body type makes them worthy of the rank of how high they are on the totem pole when it comes to superiority or whatnot. But there were no white people in this zoo. So how can you compare?
The globe. From Japan came representatives of the Ainu people. Patagonians came from South America. Igorots and Negritos came from the Philippines. Both were thought by scientists of the time to be near the bottom of the evolutionary ladder for humans. The Negritos were even marketed at the fair as another missing link between humans and apes.
Not only did they have pygmies,
but perhaps the most exotic people group brought to St. Louis for public display were pygmies from the African Congo.
Pygmies may be missing characteristics because they...
Will the pygmies brought last week to the World's Fair prove Darwin's theory of the missing link? Will a study of the little black children of the African jungles shed light on the theory evolved by Darwin as regards the evolution of the human race? Dr. W.J. McGee, chief of the anthropology department of the World's Fair, is convinced that it will. This is the first time that the Aboriginal people of Africa have been brought to an English-speaking country. This is the first opportunity that has been presented to scientists to study them. Many characteristics were noticed in the pygmies that closely resemble the ape or the simian type. It is believed that the pygmies, who are said to represent the lowest form of human development.
Like, seriously, you finna tell me that there's nowhere in the world where there are white men, white women back in the days, during that time, that were not up in trees. They ain't showing Australia. I would think at some point before Europe became the Europe that it was, some of them same white folks were climbing. Well, maybe not the same white folks. Their family was climbing up trees and going into mountains. You know, they was a little bougie. You know, they didn't do all that stuff. Because we're hard and athletic and we go get ours, we got to be monkeys.
Development are next removed from the simian family.
The pygmies appearing at the St. Louis World's Fair had been transported from Africa by former missionary turned explorer Samuel Phillips Werner.
Missionary?
Werner had gone to Africa with the explicit goal of finding pygmies.
Missionary? Let me look that up. Let me go back.
The anthropology department of the World's Fair is convinced that it will. This is the first time that the Aboriginal people of Africa have been brought to an English-speaking country. This is the first opportunity that has been presented to scientists to study them. Many characteristics were noticed in the pygmies that closely resemble the ape or the simian type. It is believed that the pygmies, who are said to represent the lowest form of human development, are next removed from the simian family.
The pygmies appearing at the St. Louis World's Fair had been transported.
Missionary. I'm spelling that wrong. Missionary. All right. A person sent on a religious mission, especially one sent to promote Christianity in a foreign country. Listen, all right? Don't you come for me, you Bible people. But I digress. I believe in God. I know what God has done for me. And God continues to do for me. But that book is just like the social study book. That book is like the history book. That book is just like the books that these scientists have created. They wrote it. And they wrote it to make them seem superior. Hence, white Jesus. Missionary, a person sent on a religious mission, especially one sent to promote Christianity in a foreign country. So these missionaries went over to the pygmies and they said, oh, hey, do you know Jesus? You don't know Jesus? But how about you go ahead and get on this boat and I'll introduce you to Jesus. Come on, come on over here so I can introduce you to Jesus. Why would I want to follow something like that? Because I don't know. So here I am giving these people the benefit of the doubt. I'm talking at these pygmies, right? I'm pretty sure they was given something. They was rused. And so now they're being brought to a whole nother country and being put on display as animals.
From Africa by former missionary turned explorer Samuel Phillips Werner. Werner had gone to Africa with the explicit goal of finding pygmies to display at the fair.
He had gone to the Congo heavily armed, and he had gone hunting for these people he called pygmies, these diminutive people of the Central African forest.
The Fair's anthropologist William McGee repeatedly compared the pygmies to monkeys and apes. In the journal Science, he even asserted that pygmies were commonly considered to approach subhuman types more closely than any other variety of the genus Homo.
They were considered by men of science at that time to be the lowest form of humans. In some thought they were subhuman.
The pygmies were less than thrilled by their welcome at the fair.
The Americans treat us as they do our pet monkey. They laugh at us and poke their umbrellas into our faces. They do the same to our monkey.
One pygmy at the fair became a special celebrity. His name was Ota Benga. Samuel Werner had purchased him at a slave market. Ota Benga was advertised to fairgoers.
Let me go back. Missionaries went over to the pygmies' land. They got these pygmies. They're supposed to be part of the church. Tell me if I'm wrong. Did God say that one race was what? God didn't even say anything about a race. So why is that a such thing? These are Christians. Are there races in the Bible? Are there different races in the Bible? Are there black people, Chinese people, Asian people? Dang, I need to go read the Bible. I don't hear no Bible people talking about race in the Bible, but I do hear sanctified Christians talking about how superior they are. So missionary going to teach you how to find Jesus, end up putting you into slavery. Don't make sense.
As the only genuine African cannibal in America today. For a nickel, he would display his pointed teeth that supposedly enabled him to eat human flesh.
Man.
At the end of the fair, the pygmies returned to Africa with Samuel Werner. But in 1906, Werner brought Ota Benga back to America.
Took everybody back but him.
It would prove a fateful choice.
Dang.
Samuel Werner returned from Africa to New York City on July the 30th, 1906, arriving on the SS Armenian from Liverpool. He was accompanied by 2 chimpanzees, a snake, a parrot, and 50 boxes of materials from Africa that he hoped to sell to museums. He was also joined by Ota Benga. Werner quickly departed New York, leaving Benga at the American Museum of Natural History in Manhattan. Established in 1869, the museum was already becoming one of the premier scientific institutions in the world. Ota Benga was largely left free to wander the museum's exhibit halls. When Samuel Werner eventually returned to New York, he was fighting off creditors, and the museum wanted him to find new lodgings for Ota Benga. So Werner worked out an agreement to move Ota Benga to the New York Zoological Park, otherwise known as the Bronx Zoo. Spread over more than 260 acres, the Bronx Zoo had been envisioned by its founders as the largest zoo in the world and the grandest zoological establishment on Earth. The zoo was directed by William Temple Hornaday. A noted zoologist, Hornaday formerly worked at the Smithsonian, and he had already founded the National Zoo in Washington, D.C. Overseeing Hornaday was an executive committee chaired by Henry Fairfield Osborn, a distinguished professor at Columbia University. Hornaday and Osborn had dreams of exhibiting more than just animals at their new zoo. Both wanted to install Native Americans on zoo grounds, with Osborn promising that one day the Indian and his teepee would take their place next to the zoological park.
Boy, you fucking lying. This man sitting up here saying that one day some teepees and some Indians gonna be on my zoo ground. Y'all don't see nothing wrong with that? And there's people still thinking like this now. So there's some truth to this. Because y'all wrote it. Y'all believed it. So this is y'all truth. So if we got to believe everything else, why can't we believe that y'all are this way? And still are to a certain degree. Not all of you. Because I can say some folks in my community,
Mark's buffalo. Now they had their chance to put their first human on display. Hornaday quickly agreed to purchase one of Werner's chimpanzees and to house both the chimp and Otobenga at the zoo. Hornaday planned to exhibit the pygmy and the chimpanzee together in a cage in the zoo's monkey house.
It was presented as science, not as a circus act, because these were men of science who were doing this.
It was true.
Otobenga went on display in the monkey house on Saturday, September the 8th, 1906. The next day, a sign was placed on the cage explaining the new exhibit.
The African pygmy, Otobenga, age 23 years, height 4 feet 11 inches, weight 103 pounds, brought from the Kasai River, Congo Free State, exhibited each afternoon during September.
Thousands of New Yorkers came to stare and laugh and debate the meaning of the display. Is it a man? Some of them wondered. Newspaper coverage brought even more people, and in just a few weeks, the zoo drew nearly 250,000 visitors. But the notoriety also brought controversy.
It should have brought
New York's clergy, in particular, were horrified at what they saw as a dehumanizing spectacle. First to speak out was the Reverend Robert Stewart MacArthur, pastor of the city's Calvary Baptist Church, one of the largest Baptist congregations in America.
The person responsible for this exhibition degrades himself as much as he does the African. Instead of making a beast of this little fellow, he should be put in school.
Ministers from New York's African-American community soon organized a protest committee. After visiting the zoo and seeing Benga for themselves, they were horrified.
They thought it was outrageous. They clearly saw a human being who appeared to be afraid, who was being heckled and jeered at and things thrown at him, and he was being, debased on the hallowed grounds of the New York Zoological Society in New York City.
The ministers demanded that Otobenga be taken off display and be offered an education. James H. Gordon, superintendent of the Howard Colored Orphan Asylum in Brooklyn, appealed to the zoo to end the spectacle.
If Professor Werner found difficulty in disposing of the boy, why did he not apply to us? We would have seen that he was well cared for.
Gordon also denounced the way the young African was being used as a prop to prove Darwinian evolution.
This is a Christian country, and the exhibition evidently aims to be a demonstration of the Darwinian theory of...
Did he not say this was a Christian country? It don't act Christian, does it? It acts far from being Christian. It ain't... I take my hat off and say, it ain't never been a Christian country. They just brought that title over here just to make it sound good.
Evolution. The Darwinian theory of evolution absolutely is opposed to Christianity, and a public demonstration in its favor should not be permitted. Neither the Negro nor the white man is related to the monkey. Such an exhibition only degrades a human being's manhood. We do not like this exhibition of one of our race with the monkeys. Our race, we think, is depressed enough without exhibiting one of us with the apes. We think we are worthy of being considered human beings with souls.
Samuel Werner tried to deflect the criticism denying that he put Otabenga on display to show that he was somehow subhuman.
If Otabenga is in a cage, he is only there to look after the animals.
Zoo director Hornaday meanwhile declared that the black minister's protest was ridiculous.
Though a believer myself in the Darwinian theory, I had no idea of using the exhibition to enforce it. The boy is on exhibition simply because the public wishes to see him. He is well treated and happy. To say that the boy is placed in the cage to show his similarities to the monkey is nonsense. He is much more intelligent than many white men whom I have known.
Hornaday.
You know they do this bullshit to this day. They sit and they paint a narrative on the media and stuff, and they go tell the masses that a person like me likes doing the job for them and making them rich. Oh, they enjoy working for me. They love doing my duties. They love being my not slave, my workers, and that I treat equally. When? Where? And at this point right now, you're trying to get us back like that because you're making stuff so high that in order for me to even live, I got to go back and work for you, because if I try to be an entrepreneur, you're going to try and stop me from making any form of money for myself. But
made clear that he wasn't about to shut down the popular exhibit.
The exhibition shall certainly be continued, unless the directors of the park decide otherwise.
But the leaders of the New York Zoological Society were pleased by the display. Henry Fairfield Osborn even congratulated Hornaday for the excellent press coverage, commenting that Benga is certainly making his way successfully as a sensation. Spurned by Hornaday, the African-American ministers decided to appeal to George McClellan Jr., the Democratic mayor of New York. McClellan was the son of the controversial general during the Civil War who had tried to unseat Abraham Lincoln in the presidential election of 1864. The elder McClellan openly confessed that he was prejudiced in favor of the white race and said that he couldn't learn to like the odor of either billy goats or Negroes. The younger McClellan now refused to even meet with the African-American ministers, sending out an assistant with a dismissive note referring them to the New York Zoological Society. The ministers then went to see Madison Grant, the Zoological Society's secretary. Grant was a prominent member of New York Society. A graduate of Yale, he received a law degree from Columbia. He was also a trustee of the American Museum of Natural History, a counselor of the American Geographical Society, and a founder of the Bronx Zoo. It would have been hard for the ministers to find someone less sympathetic. Grant was an open racist who thought blacks were an inferior race and regarded those who had parents of different races as...
So yet again, here we go. All these races being put into power constantly. All these races that are being put into power are making laws constantly. Do you think that's changed today? Barely. Y'all out here being legally blind, falsely, acting like you can't see, and it's stuff right here in front of you.
Mongrels. Within a decade, he would write The Passing of the Great Race, a book which championed Nordic supremacy and keeping blacks subservient to whites. The book was reportedly praised by Adolf Hitler as his Bible.
Bam! That was a bombshell, and that's what we're going to end this one off at. Like, let me play it back.
Grant, the Zoological Society's secretary. Grant was a prominent member of New York Society. A graduate of Yale, he received a law degree from Columbia.
I don't think y'all heard.
He was also a trustee of the American Museum of Natural History, a counselor of the American Geographical Society, and a founder of the Bronx Zoo. It would have been hard for the ministers to find someone less sympathetic. Grant was an open racist who thought blacks were an inferior race and regarded those who had parents of different races as mongrels.
Years.
Within a decade, he would write The Passing of the Great Race, a book which championed Nordic supremacy and keeping blacks subservient to whites. The book was reportedly praised by Adolf Hitler as his Bible.
Mr. Hitler himself. So you're trying to tell me ain't nobody talking about how in the 1900s the racist men in the United States that are creating books that are bona fide, their truth about what black people are, what other races are, and how racist they are. They were the one that created the monster that destroyed cis Jews the way that he did. I've never heard that before. That was my first time hearing it today. And I wanted to bring this to y'all, to anyone that's listening. The white men of the United States created Hitler. And ain't nobody talking about it. They created Hitler off of the systematic system of holding black people at bay and telling us that they're far superior than us. These books that they wrote about being more superior than us, got put in the hand of a mass murderer man, which became his Bibles. But ain't nobody talking about that though. I ain't seeing that on the news. I ain't hear that in the Holocaust, when in the documentary of the Holocaust. Have you? If you have, comment and let me know. Because that was a first for me. That was a bombshell for me. I appreciate it. I'm not gonna do too much of these. It's just something that itched me today, and when I get an itch, I go to scratching, and boy, oh boy, I am scratching. But I'm deciding on if I'm gonna start doing Wednesdays. Not every Wednesday. I do know it's not gonna be every Wednesday, but thinking about how many Wednesdays I'm going to want to do once the podcast starts kicking up on the But if you're watching this now, please go back and rewind, because the last part is what got me and busted wide open and said, I got to do this, because I didn't know. I know a lot of more people didn't either. So until next time, I totally appreciate you guys. And if you're watching this on YouTube, go ahead and subscribe, follow. We have a couple of more videos that you can watch before we rebrand it on our podcast, The Sofa Real Talk. You guys have a great night.